Hello and welcome back. Today, we're talking about something that many learners struggle with: confidence in speaking English.
That's right. A lot of people understand English well, but hesitate when it comes to speaking.
So, why does this happen, and how can we overcome it?
Let's dive in.
One of the biggest reasons people hesitate to speak English is fear of making mistakes, fear of being judged, or even just feeling self-conscious. But the truth is, making mistakes is part of the learning process.
Absolutely.
Think about how we learned our first language.
As kids, we didn't worry about grammar or pronunciation.
We just spoke, made mistakes, and kept going. That's exactly how we should approach learning English too.
Right. Another challenge is that many learners spend too much time studying grammar and vocabulary without actually practicing speaking. They feel like they need to be perfect before they start talking. But in reality, fluency comes from practice, not just knowledge.
Exactly. The key is to use the language as much as possible.
Talk to yourself in English. Join language exchange programs, or even practice with AI.
The more you speak, the more confident you become.
And let's not forget about mindset. If you keep telling yourself, "I'm bad at English," you'll start believing it. Instead, try saying, "I'm learning," and "I'm improving every day." A positive mindset can make a huge difference.
That's a great point.
Also, don't compare yourself to native speakers. Fluency isn't about sounding perfect, it's about being understood and expressing yourself comfortably.
Right. So if you're listening to this and you're afraid to speak English, just start small. Say a few sentences out loud every day and slowly build your confidence.
And remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's communication. The more you practice, the better you'll get.
Keep going.
That's such an important point, Jake. Fluency isn't just about knowing the right words, it's about confidence, consistency, and real-life practice. And honestly, English learners often underestimate how much they already know.
Exactly.
So many people say, "I understand English, but I can't speak." The truth is, if you can understand, you're already halfway there. It's just about breaking that mental barrier and actually using what you know.
Right, and one way to do that is by thinking in English. A lot of learners translate everything from their native language before speaking, and that slows them down. If you start thinking in English even just simple thoughts like, "I need to buy groceries," or "It's a beautiful day," you'll start speaking more naturally.
That's a great tip. Another thing that helps is shadowing. Have you heard of it?
Oh, definitely. Shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker and repeat what they say immediately, almost like an echo. It's great for improving pronunciation and rhythm.
Exactly.
It helps train your brain and mouth to form sentences naturally. Plus, you get used to the natural speed and flow of English.
And another powerful trick is recording yourself. I know it feels weird at first, but when you listen back, you can hear what sounds good and what needs improvement.
Yes. And sometimes you'll realize you actually sound better than you thought. People are often their own worst critics, but listening to yourself can boost confidence.
Speaking of confidence, it's also important to surround yourself with English. Change your phone's language settings, follow English-speaking creators, and try to immerse yourself as much as possible.
Great point. The more exposure you have, the more natural English will feel. Even if you don't have native speakers around you, the internet gives us so many opportunities to learn and practice.
Exactly, and remember, speaking is a skill. Just like playing an instrument or a sport, the more you practice, the better you get. It's not about being perfect, it's about progress.
100%.
The key is to keep going.
Mistakes are proof that you're learning, so don't be afraid to make them.
That's such a good reminder, Jake. A lot of learners stop themselves from speaking because they're afraid of making mistakes. But honestly, native speakers make mistakes too. The difference is, they don't overthink it, they just keep talking.
Exactly.
No one expects you to speak perfectly.
Think about kids learning their first language. They make tons of mistakes, but they just keep going.
That's how they improve.
That's such a great comparison. Kids don't feel embarrassed when they mispronounce a word or use the wrong grammar. They just keep trying until they get it right. Adults should have the same mindset when learning English.
And another thing, most people are actually impressed when you speak their language, even if it's not perfect.
I mean, if someone tries to speak your native language, do you judge them for making mistakes?
No way. If anything, I admire them for trying. And most native English speakers feel the same way. They appreciate the effort and will usually help you if you get stuck on a word or phrase.
Right. And that's why real conversations are so important. Even if you don't have native speakers around you, there are so many ways to practice speaking.
Like language exchange partners, there are tons of apps and websites where you can connect with people who want to learn your language in exchange for helping you with English.
That's a great option.
And even if you're shy, you can start small.
Try talking to yourself in English, describing what you're doing or thinking. It might feel weird at first, but it helps build confidence.
Yes, and don't forget to use what you enjoy. If you love movies, try repeating lines from your favorite scenes. If you're into music, sing along to English songs. Learning should be fun.
That's so true. The more enjoyable it is, the more you'll stick with it. And when you make English part of your daily life, improvement happens naturally.
And speaking of making English part of your daily life, immersion is key. You don't have to live in an English-speaking country to immerse yourself. You can create an English environment wherever you are.
Exactly. Change the language on your phone. Watch YouTube videos in English. Listen to English podcasts while you're doing chores. It all adds up.
Oh, and reading is another great way to improve your vocabulary and sentence structure. But here's the trick: read things you actually enjoy. If you love sports, read sports articles. If you're into fashion, read fashion blogs. It has to be interesting so you stay motivated.
That's a great point. And if books or long articles feel intimidating, start with short content like social media posts or even comic strips. Anything that keeps you engaged.
And you can even talk back to your content. When you watch a video, pause it and repeat what was said. Or after finishing a paragraph in a book, summarize it out loud in your own words.
Yes,
That's a simple but powerful way to improve fluency.
and honestly, don't worry too much about grammar when speaking.
Fluency comes first. Grammar will improve naturally as you get more comfortable.
Right, when we were kids, we didn't sit down and study grammar before speaking. We just spoke and picked up the rules over time. It should be the same with English.
That's why making mistakes is actually a good thing. Each mistake teaches you something new. If you say something wrong and someone corrects you, that's a lesson you'll remember.
And mistakes mean you're actually using the language. Someone who never speaks will never improve, but someone who speaks and makes 100 mistakes a day will improve much faster.
100%. Learning a language isn't about being perfect. It's about communicating. The goal is to express yourself, not to impress people with perfect grammar.
And the more you communicate, the more natural it will feel. At some point, you'll realize that you're thinking in English without even trying. That's when you know you're making real progress.
Absolutely.
The best way to learn is to keep going, keep speaking, and most importantly, enjoy the process.
That's the key: enjoying the process. When learning feels like a chore, it's easy to give up. But if you make it fun, it becomes something you actually look forward to.
Exactly.
And one way to keep it fun is by finding a learning partner. Having someone to practice with, whether it's a friend, a tutor, or even an online language exchange partner, makes a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. When you have someone to talk to, you stay accountable. And conversations are one of the best ways to learn. Even if you just send voice messages back and forth, it helps build confidence.
Confidence is so important. I think a lot of people struggle with English not because they don't know enough, but because they're too afraid to speak.
Yeah, that fear of making mistakes can hold people back. But honestly, native speakers don't care if your grammar isn't perfect. They just appreciate that you're trying.
Exactly. No one expects you to speak like Shakespeare. People just want to understand you. And the more you speak, the better you get.
Speaking of practice, another great trick is to narrate your day in English. Just talk to yourself.
Haha. Yeah, it might feel weird at first, but it works.
Like when you're making breakfast, say out loud, "I'm making toast. Now I'm spreading butter." It helps your brain think in English.
Yes, and that kind of habit builds fluency over time. Your brain gets used to forming sentences in English without overthinking.
Another thing that helps is shadowing. Have you tried it?
Oh, yes, that's when you listen to native speakers and try to repeat exactly what they say, as quickly as you can. It's great for pronunciation and rhythm.
And you can do it with anything: movies, interviews, audiobooks. Just mimic the way they speak. Even if you don't understand everything, Your mouth and brain are getting used to the sounds.
That's why listening is just as important as speaking. A lot of learners focus so much on grammar and vocabulary, but forget to train their ears.
Yeah,
And English has so many accents, so the more you listen, the easier it gets to understand different people.
That's true. You don't want to be stuck only understanding one type of English. Watching a mix of American, British, and Australian content can really help.
and once you get used to hearing different accents, you'll feel more confident talking to people from anywhere.
Confidence, consistency, and having fun, that's really the formula for success. Keep going, and English will soon feel like second nature.
You know what else helps?
Immersing yourself in English as much as possible. Even if you don't live in an English-speaking country, you can create your own English environment.
That's so true, like changing your phone and social media settings to English, following English-speaking influencers, or even thinking in English.
Thinking in English is a game changer.
It stops you from translating everything in your head, which slows you down.
Exactly, it forces your brain to process English directly. A great way to practice this is by asking yourself questions in English and answering them in English.
Oh, I love that. Like, what am I going to do today?
Then you answer, I need to go to the store. Then I'll cook dinner. It's such a simple habit, but it really helps.
Another thing that makes a huge difference is storytelling. When you tell a story, you practice structuring sentences naturally.
That's a good one. It could be a real story from your life or just a made-up one. The goal is to speak continuously without stopping too much.
And if you don't have someone to tell your story to, just record yourself. Later, you can listen and notice what you can improve.
Yes, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you become.
Speaking English won't feel like a challenge anymore.
That's the goal, right? To feel comfortable. Because when you're comfortable, you're more confident, and confidence makes learning so much easier.
Definitely, and mistakes are part of the journey.
Instead of being afraid of them, embrace them.
That's so important. Every mistake is actually progress because it means you're trying. No one learns without making mistakes.
Exactly.
The only way to get better is to keep going. If you wait until you're perfect to speak, you'll never start.
And starting is the hardest part. But once you do, you realize learning English can actually be fun and exciting.
Right.
It's not just about studying, it's about using English in real life, making connections, and opening new opportunities.
And the more you practice, the more you'll see progress. So just keep going.
You know, another thing that really helps is surrounding yourself with English as much as possible.
It's like training your brain to get used to the language naturally.
Yeah, like watching movies without subtitles, listening to podcasts, and even reading books in English. It forces your brain to process the language the way native speakers do.
Exactly. And even small habits can make a big difference.
For example, when I was learning, I started writing my daily to-do list in English.
That's such a good idea. It's a simple way to include English in your daily life without feeling like you're studying.
Another thing I did was describe things around me in English. Like if I was sitting in a CAF, I'd think, the coffee is hot. The barista is making another latte.
The couple next to me is talking about their weekend plans.
That's such a useful exercise. It's like training your brain to think in English.
Yeah, and it really helps with fluency because you stop translating in your head.
Speaking of fluency, one thing that helped me was shadowing. You know, when you listen to a native speaker and repeat exactly what they say?
Oh yeah,
I've tried that too. It really helps with pronunciation and rhythm.
Right. It forces you to copy the way native speakers naturally speak. Plus, it makes you more aware of how words are connected in sentences.
that's true. English has so many connected sounds. Like gonna instead of going to or wanna instead of want to.
Exactly. And if you practice shadowing, you start to sound more natural over time.
Another fun way to improve is by singing along to English songs. It's great for pronunciation and rhythm, and it makes learning more enjoyable.
Oh, I love that. And if you don't understand the lyrics at first, you can look them up and learn new vocabulary.
Yeah, and music helps words stick in your memory. That's why songs get stuck in our heads so easily.
True. And once you hear a phrase in a song, you're more likely to remember it when you need it in a conversation.
That reminds me, movies and TV shows are another great way to pick up natural phrases.
Oh, definitely. And if you're a beginner, you can start with subtitles in English.
Right. That way, you're reading and listening at the same time.
And as you get better, you can try watching without subtitles to challenge yourself.
Yeah, the goal is to train your brain to understand English without depending on translations.
Exactly. And once you reach that level, you'll realize that learning English is not just about grammar and vocabulary, it's about experiencing the language.
And the best way to experience it is by using it in real situations, even if you make mistakes.
100%. Mistakes are part of learning, and the more you use English, the faster you improve.
And that's the key. Really using English as much as possible in real life situations.
The more you practice, the more confident you become.
Exactly, and confidence is just as important as knowledge. A lot of people know English, but are afraid to speak because they think they'll make mistakes.
Yeah, but mistakes are completely normal. Even native speakers make mistakes sometimes. The important thing is to keep going and not be afraid to try.
Right, and don't wait until you feel ready. If you keep waiting for the perfect moment, you'll never start.
That's so true.
The best way to get better is to speak, even if it's not perfect.
Over time, you'll improve naturally.
And if you ever feel stuck, just remind yourself why you're learning English in the first place. Maybe it's for travel, work, or just for fun. Keeping that motivation in mind helps a lot.
Definitely. Learning a language is a journey, not a destination. So enjoy the process, have fun with it, and celebrate every little progress you make.
Well said, Jake. Hopefully, this conversation has inspired some of our listeners to be more confident in their English learning journey.
Yes.
And remember, you're not alone in this.
Every English learner goes through the same challenges. Just keep going, and you'll get there.
That's the spirit. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Keep practicing and stay motivated. See you soon.
Bye.